Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown,
the unofficial sumo podcast
for official sumo fans.
Welcome to Grand Sumo Breakdown. This is Ryan.
This is Jake.
And this is Fleric.
And this is going to be another edition of Ask GSB. We did this a couple of years ago and got a request to do another one. And so we decided, hey, that's a good idea. And my wife informed me earlier today that she's been telling me to do another one of these for a while, and now that a fan has finally asked us to do it like a week later, we're like, okay, that sounds like a good idea.
Your wife can't expect you to listen to everything she says.
I mean, she's not going to listen to the podcast. She's not going to listen to every word I say, most of which are contained in this podcast. I don't have to listen to every word she says, most of which are contained directions to me to do things.
Yeah. I say I probably get about a 60% hit rate with my wife as far as listening and understanding what she's saying, and I think that's honestly pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. Ryan is dead silent after the podcast. He just goes through his life not saying anything.
He just returns to the poor heckled husband just instantly as soon as we hit the stop recording button.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nods his head, goes do his honey-do list.
I think that actually leads us right into our first question from patron Katie Vickers, was asking about how supportive and amazing the wives of GSB are for this podcast. Jake, why don't you answer that one?
I'm trying to think of what's the funniest way that I can pander to the wives here.
Talk more about that 60% listen rate.
They're so supportive. Sometimes I even hit 70% listen rate. No, seriously though, the three of the four of us who are married, the wives definitely carry a lot of the weight to allow us to do our hobby, and that's super cool.
Yeah,
I mean, Ryan has a baby, which I think is kind of probably trumps everybody else, but I've got a lot of pets, that like to make guest appearances, either walking across the desk and showing their cat buttholes or dogs barking in the background. There's a lot going on in all of our houses, and I think the wives carry a lot of the weight because essentially this is just our hobby, and we don't we're not providing for the family here. We're just basically locking ourselves in the office to do what we want while the wives carry the weight. And that's, if any of the three married dudes were not married, it would not happen the way that it does.
Yeah. And I don't want to say I thank my wife for allowing me to have time to work on this. But
yes, she has blessed you and granted you with the free time to have a hobby.
But yeah, she is very gracious and understanding of the amount of time that it takes to put this podcast together. It takes a lot of time to do the Bondscape predictions. It takes a lot of time to do some of the research for these questions and putting the outlines together for all this. So I want to
a lot of these questions, but a couple of them.
Some of them. You'll see I did a little bit too much research. But
good.
So I do want to say a hearty thank you to my wife. So Katie, when you listen to this episode, tell my wife I was nice to her.
Because she won't
be silent.
Correct. Like I said.
Yeah.
Wife doesn't listen to everything I say. I don't have to listen to everything she says.
Yeah. And I too would like to just give a hearty thank you to myself for finding the time with no wife commitment at all to just go ahead and be able to join these when I have the time. Go me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. That's one question down. This is easy. So
hey, check that one off.
Yeah. So how we are going to be doing this episode, we're going to try to cap this at about 1 hour. Estimating we've probably been going for about 5 minutes at this point. So we got about 55 more minutes of us answering questions. We're going to get through as many.
Sounds like 55 more questions.
We're going to get through as many as we can, but we're also going to try to as thoroughly answer all the questions as well as we can. So we don't know how many we're going to get through. Whatever we don't get to, if you asked us a question on Twitter, if you left us a voicemail, asked us on Patreon, sent us an email, we will get to them. It might not be in this episode, but it will be in a upcoming Ask GSB 3 or 4 episode.
Yeah, we're just trying to shorten the list to relieve the burden on future GSB.
Yeah,
because
also Mac isn't here. I feel like we should point that out. Mac's not here. He is. He is bettering himself by taking educational classes. He's going for like his second Masters or something like that. I don't know. He's weird like that. Mm-hmm. So that's what Mac is doing. And unfortunately, very busy schedule for the rest of us this week. So it's the only time we could record. And shockingly, next week is already time for us to get into our regular Basho episode. So we don't have time to do this at any other time. So if you're looking for Mac, he will be back next week.
Cool of us to like start our introduction, 5-10 minutes into the show here. Totally. And the other thing that we were going to bring up, we're going to prioritize slightly the questions that we did get from Patreon. For those of you who turn off the podcast whenever we talk about Patreon, I don't blame you. But the $3 tier on Patreon allows you to pick a segment, pick a topic for us to talk about at moderate length. So send us your ideas if you are a $3 patron. We do have one here that I'm going to get a start on, but I don't feel I can really do full justice to myself. But Jessica asked us about striking in sumo, and I will give you a little bit of crap, Jessica, because you are absolutely right. This was a rambly, not really fully single question asking type of paragraph novel that you sent us. But no, I love it. So basically what Jessica's asking about is how does striking work in sumo? There's the grappling is obviously the main focus. But when we talk about like a pusher thruster type wrestler, what are they trying to do? There's guys like maybe Onosho is kind of simple. He's just trying to keep you away from his belt. He's trying to push forward. And that's basically it, right? It's pretty obvious what's going on there. But what about like some wrestlers that are less pure in their pusher thrusteriness? Somebody like Hakuho does a ton of actual striking. But what is he doing? Like, what is he trying to accomplish? Because most of the time, Hakuho doesn't win by pushing somebody out. He wins by a throw of some sort. But that striking is still key to the style. And I think that it's a good comparison might be to bring up boxing or mixed martial arts, where wrestlers in particular going into mixed martial arts use striking as a way to like confuse and overwhelm their opponent so they can get in close and do the grappling that they want to do. And I think that's a close analogy to what striking is in sumo. Nobody's like, maybe it happens in a freak accident here or there, but nobody's knocking each other out with those big haymaker slaps. They might stun somebody for a second, and that's going to do the trick to let them get the grip that they want. Similar as well to like point fighting boxers, a lot of the times will use their striking as a way to get in close and stall up the match.
Yeah, I remember seeing this a lot with Hakuho, and that's one thing I kind of noticed. And I thought, oh, this is really smart. Is like he like in his Tachi, he goes with like a little strike, a little slap to the face, and a lot of that I think is to kind of just, like you say, kind of distract them, able to get a good grip at the very beginning of the match when it's probably very chaotic and it's very important. So yeah, it's I definitely would say I've seen that with some people just trying to get advantage with a strike. Yeah. Unlike boxing or MMA. There are not fights that are ending because of the striking, but the striking is the means to the end of getting the advantageous grip. And you can apply that to most other striking sports as well. Like Muay Thai focuses a lot on the clinch, and a lot of the strategy in Muay Thai is using the striking to get the clinch that you want to get. So that kind of thing is like applicable to a lot of sports, but in sumo, I think the comparison here is using it as a distraction, using it to, like Ishiura did in the last Basho to Akisayama, just slap the crap out of his face to allow yourself to sneak around to the side or do something else unexpected because you bought yourself a quarter of a second of distraction. Mm-hmm. So I do think this is something that I'd love to talk to somebody more experienced in sumo technique just to like get more specifics, more detail, but yeah, I think it's interesting, and I'm definitely going to be watching more in the next Basho to see like, different strategies of using that striking to, using them as different means to different ends. So
Could be a lot of fun, and I appreciate Jessica. I appreciate you bringing up the topic. That's very interesting, and I think it's under discussed.
All right, Fleric, why don't you choose your first question?
Okay, I'm just gonna go down the list, and I see. Oh no, I this name's not gonna go right. Giuseppe?
I think Giuseppe.
Giuseppe. Celio?
Chelico?
Yeah.
We're so sorry.
Yeah.
Everyone Italian listening to this, we're sorry.
I feel like it's Celico, if that's the case.
From now on, everybody needs to send us a pronunciation diagram for their name.
Even Jessica on the last question was tough. I had to do some reading on that one.
Like, if your name is Bert, still help us out.
Yeah. And I'm still going to mess it up.
Yeah.
So, Giuseppe, he asked about mental blocks. Yeah. We're just going to move on from that.
Call him Big G or G.
Yes.
Big G. Okay, I like that. The BIGG. We'll go with that. So, yeah, he asked about mental blocks, and with I'm guessing where it kind of comes with the sumo. And yeah, it's definitely a thing. We've kind of seen that in sumo from time. I did some look up like the actual definition of mental blocks, and it's like a psychological obstacle that prevents athletes from performing a particular skill. And normally it's kind of like where it's in situations where this athlete, is like really good, like Zeki is really, really strong, but for some reason they're like against someone or against a certain situation, they're performing like below their current skill. And like we see this a lot in like sports, but it's also like a lot in life in general, like in music, like test taking, competitive rap battles. If it's ever kind of some competitive thing, it's like you can kind of really get in your head of like if you are focusing too much on other stuff and kind of getting distracted, because a lot of this, like what the cause while I was reading up is just kind of a lack of focus. Like if you just kind of think about the result, like, oh, I need to make sure I win, like, or I'm going to lose, or dang, I'm losing right now. Or you kind of think about a previous performance, fear to make a mistake. That's kind of a big one. That's actually something I've experienced in like sports and stuff myself, is like I really want to make sure that I do really well. But because of that, I do really risk averse stuff, and I actually don't play up to what I need to actually have the team win. This is where I usually play being ultimate frizzy, usually. And last one they kind of said was like overly emotional. Like if your emotions are really in your face, like you're going to get distracted. Some people can use that as kind of fuel, but it's also could be just kind of an issue. So yeah, and it's kind of tough when that happens. Like we said, we see in sumo, which is the other thing I did a little bit of research on. I mostly kind of just went through the current Bonus-K and see if I could see some matchups that were really, really lopsided. And there are definitely a couple. I want to say like the most famous ones I think in the past though were like Tochinoshin never beating Yokozuna. And then I think the same thing but until he finally did, which was when he was on his Ozeki run, which made that storyline just so powerful. I just loved it.
Yeah. I don't know if it was any Yokozuna, but definitely Hakuho.
Yeah, I feel like it was. If only there was some way we can check that.
Our recent bonus episode on Kakuryu, he lost his first 20 matches against Yokozuna. So yeah, what's another? Hakuho versus Okinoumi is like a long-lasting rivalry that is like, okay, rivalry was very much the wrong word. A very long-lasting matchup that has a very one-sided history.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually glad you brought that up because, like we said, with the definition of it is like an athlete not performing to like their usual, like how they do. There's also the case that maybe sometimes there is a skill gap between the two players and you just suck. And I'm imagining like 90% of the matches, like the results with Hakuho versus anyone, probably fell into that camp. Like yeah. I think he does have like mind games where like on the Tachi where it kind of stares you down and like you just get really, really scared and intimidated. But I think a lot of that was probably just him just being the better, like Rickshie.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely a mental aspect to it though. Like somebody who's as good as Okinoumi is to face off against Hakuho more than like 20 times or however many, and yet still only be able to beat him like, once or twice. We talk about this with Hokuto Fuji as well. Ryan always likes to bring up how he's a streaky kind of wrestler. And that could, at least our hypothesis on that one is also that it's kind of mental because once he starts winning, he tends to keep winning.
I can do this. I can do this. And then he loses like, oh, I'm never going to win another match again.
It's very difficult for us to backseat psychologist on this, but it's definitely something that comes to mind and something that, it's a hypothesis that would explain a lot of the things that we see in sumo.
Yeah, I think I kind of blacked out for a couple seconds while you and Flarik were talking, so I don't remember if you brought him up. But Asanoyama, we talk about him quite a bit.
He was going to be the first one I brought up, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we said with before, like there is not sure of whether or not, I personally believe like whether or not there's a skill gap and like, this was a natural occurrence where Hakuho wins 20 times out of 20. Mm-hmm. But with Asanoyama, he's like top of the game. He's an Ozeki. But like you say, his record against Terunofuji is just not that great.
And even his record to start off this past Basha, where he started off 7-4, when he was facing mostly Maegashira and maybe like Komosubi here and there, performing much below his level. And maybe we know why he has been performing below his level, because he is now suspended for a year, but he's been going out to these events for a long time, and maybe it was something going on in the back of his head. Like he's knew it's like, oh no, I'm breaking the rules. If I get caught, something really bad's going to happen to me. That could be complete BS, but it could be a factor. It could be something in the back of his head that's affecting his performance. Like you said, Flarik, he's thinking about something. He could be thinking about something else and not about the sumo.
Yeah. Or maybe that's his process of getting like relaxed and kind of into the moment. Like he just has to go all those hostess clubs, like at least every night of the boss show. And if he can't do that, he just gets in his own head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Like I looked up some like kind of solutions. Like once again, like there are multiple different ways this could be kind of caused. And I just want to mention out like some of the solutions that people have mentioned that have worked for other athletes. But it's like focusing on having fun. Like if you just kind of like focus on, I have to do this. Like I have to win for me to succeed. Like just kind of remember like, hey, this is still a sport. This is a game I still love. And like kind of thinking about that, making practice more game-like. Mindfulness meditation is actually huge. Kind of getting into staying in the moment and kind of being alert and like focused, relaxed, not being distracted by other stuff. Changing washi colors. We see that a lot in sumo. I just kind of added that one. But also I think if you're overly emotional, if you just take everything personally, I think you're going to do pretty well.
The Hakuho or Hokuto Fuji approach?
Mm-hmm. Yes. / Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely take some things personally. Anyways, just to do some quick hits of like in sumo, some of the matchups I think were pretty one-sided. We mentioned the Asanoyama versus Terunofuji. Asanoyama is 0-5, and most of those all of those was when he was as an Ozeki. So I think there's definitely kind of something going on there with that. We have Myoguru versus Takakeisho, 0-13 in favor of Takakeisho. And like even like Myoguru is beating Ozekis and Komosubis on some tournaments, but he was just still losing against him. And it could be like a style difference as well, but 0-13 is a lot of matches.
Yeah, you'd luck into one win by now, you would think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially a matchup like that where Takakeisho has like 2 or 3 things, and that's kind of like his whole bag. Mm-hmm. It's surprising to me to see somebody that far in the red against him.
Yeah, we have Meisei versus Okinoumi, who's 0-7. We have Chinokuni versus Mitakeumi, 0-8. That one I'm guessing is just probably bad, or at least there's a skill gap between the two people. Yeah.
That could be a bad style matchup for Chinokuni because Mitakeumi is definitely a hard guy to kind of like slap around.
Mm-hmm. We have Koto Eiko versus Ichinojo. We have 0-5 on that matchup.
That could just be a size difference thing.
Yeah, there's kind of no one. Actually, I was going to mention this. Another one is Takaro Fuji versus Oyama, which is 5-21, which is not completely one-sided, but that's still pretty skewed with the number of games.
You would think that matchup, those guys would be a lot more even than 5-21.
That's certainly
they're about the same skill level, you would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. All other things being equal, I would definitely put those guys in similar tiers overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think you're right on the size thing with Takaro Fuji because he's 3-13 versus Ichinojo. So it's definitely something he struggles against. And for the last two, we have Akisayama versus Chushoma, which is 0-6. Like Chushoma kind of has his number. But then again, there's Chushoma versus Kotonowaka, which is 0-5. So he is kind of like on two different sides of like a matchup with these people.
Interesting.
Yeah, but those are just kind of like some of the quick ones I saw. There's probably some greater ones in the Sumo history, but yeah, it's definitely a thing, and it's interesting watching the Rickshie actually progress and hopefully work through that as they progress, or maybe they don't in their career.
Yeah.
They just always lose.
And if literally anybody knows more about the topic than us and wants to send us some notes to correct us on anything we just said, feel free. That was all out of our ass. We don't know what we're talking about. But I think Fleric did hit on some good points there. All right. Next question. And we have to do it. He is a patron.
Is this pronounced Gooning?
I believe it's Jan Gooning. Yes.
Yeah. Jan Gooning.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps John. I don't know. Is this Dutch?
We'll go John
Might
Gunning.
be.
There's no way that's right, but we'll just pronounce it John Gunning and say.
Yeah. I never heard of the guy.
Yeah, but because whoever this guy is pays us money, we have to answer his question. But he did ask us a question that is very specifically within our wheelhouse, or at least a couple of us on this podcast. He asked which Vikings player would make the best Rickshie. And so this is going to be very incredibly niche.
Yeah, Fleric, what do you think? What's your answer to this one?
It's Vikings legend Brett Favre, right?
I was going to say, can Fleric name a Viking?
He can name the meme Viking.
The meme Viking.
Yeah.
The greatest quarterback we ever had. Vikings legend Brett Favre.
And it's the Viking that got to hurt John Gunning on two different teams. Since John Gunning is a Bears fan. So hey, there is some nice things about that. So your initial thoughts for football players being the best Rickshie, I think you automatically assume offensive line. Those are your big guys. They already look like sumo wrestlers. They're probably, I would imagine some of their movements is pretty lined up to what you do in sumo. Not exactly, but probably like getting up underneath your opponent and trying to be the lower guy. I mean, there's a lot of center of gravity stuff that probably translates between sumo and football. I can't say that I'm an expert or even a novice in technique for either of the sports. But I'm going to go away from the obvious guys because the Vikings have an absolute stud at defensive end named Daniil Hunter.
Oh, okay. I was going to name a different defensive end.
Jared Allen.
Jared Allen was my pick.
I'm going with Daniil Hunter because Daniil Hunter is a specimen. That dude has muscles on top of muscles in places where you don't even have places. And so I'm just real interested to see what like a 250-pound guy could do if you taught him the correct technique in sumo. Like if all of your weight is like exclusively in muscle and not just in like your gut, how would that guy do in sumo? Because the first part of sumo
we see that with Ishihara, don't we?
Yeah, but he's got a lot smaller frame than somebody like Daniil Hunter, who's 6 foot plus, and he's got a lot bigger frame than Ishihara does.
To me, what I think is the big difference maker here is a defensive end in football performs better in his specific sport by having less weight on him, by having like maximum amount of muscle to weight, as opposed to just sheer weight where all weight is good. So like a guy like him that weighs 250 is like shredded 1% body fat, like Adonis. If he were to like also benefit from having a gigantic gut, he's probably a guy that's in like the 350 to 400 kind of range, you know?
Yeah.
So like it's definitely something where you got to take into account the different types of the different sports where, you know, weight for a football player versus weight for a sumo wrestler is not like comparing apples to apples. And that's kind of why, sorry, last thing here. That's kind of why Jared Allen, all the same kind of reasons that you picked Daniil Hunter, you're just better versed in modern Vikingry, I think. But
I
to
don't
me,
know about Jared Allen.
Well, no, but I mean, like, I know less about Hunter.
Okay, yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
I know more than you about modern Vikingry.
Modern Vikingry, yes. So for me, Jared Allen is always like the peak, like not just not just like athletic specimen, but also the fact that he's got that like aggression and drive to the defensive line. I think is definitely where you get that like aggression and like no holds barred kind of fighting mentality, where the offensive line is restricted by a lot more rules and therefore maybe less creative, less aggressive.
You make an interesting point by the body types of the different positions, where defensive end is probably not doesn't closely resemble a Rickshie at all, but Sumo is best of one. You just have to win one match. Well, if we just train this person to like map one really good Harite slap to the face, like a good strike, what then?
Then a lot of people are going down.
Are you talking Brett Favre here?
Yes, Vikings legend.
Viking legend Brett Favre, who could hurl a football harder than any man that we know.
Yeah.
Yes. If he can land his Harite on the Tachiai, then hell yes, Brett Favre.
Yeah. The one player I know on this Vikings team. Both say.
I think another one that would be unfair to discount would be just Adrian Peterson, like
another just absolute physical freak.
Yeah, or better yet, because he made it to the practice squad one year, Brock Lesnar, just like absolute peak Captain America level athletes. If they learn the sport from a young enough age with that type of athleticism advantage, Adrian Peterson could have like thrown a dart at a dartboard of sports and been world class at whatever he picked. Yeah. So like, and same goes for guys like Brock Lesnar or Daniil Hunter.
Yeah. So we got a couple more points. One, the defensive end, like you start the sumo match with a Tachiai. What is a Tachiai if not the football being snapped? And who are the guys that are off like a rocket at the snap, other than like the wide receivers? But that's what the defensive line does. They're off fast immediately at the snap, and then they're, depending on what they're trying to do, but they're immediately into the offensive line trying to push them back. So I think that's a very good position to think about translating over to sumo. And I think John Gunning was thinking the same thing, because he said Vikings legend Chris Dolman, who was also a legendary defensive end for the Minnesota Vikings. But I was also thinking, what if you took a big, lanky wide receiver, like say the greatest wide receiver of all time, Randy Moss, and then he just threw a couple 100 pounds of fat onto the guy?
Like just have him go to like a summer, just like do nothing but like bulk up.
Yeah, just get him as fat as you can. Then you got like probably not get as big as like Ake Bono, but then you got something similar. You got the long arms, you got the long legs, you got the reach. If you put that mass on him, I'd be very interested to see what somebody like a Randy Moss could do in the sumo. And then I was going to say sumo ring. That's called a dohyo. I'd like to see what he could do
the
in
sumo ring.
Yeah.
And then have him cut all the weight in time for the football season, right?
Oh, of course. He's going to be a multi-sport star, like Bo Jackson playing baseball and football.
And last point that I had, if we're talking defensive line as a place to look, and we're talking Vikings as a pool to pick from,
Pat Williams?
I was going to say Alan Page, one of the greatest football players of all time. And isn't he the one that also went to he also served as a justice on the Supreme Court of Minnesota.
Yeah.
So he's got the brain for sumo, because law is like the boring version of sumo, right?
Yeah. I would also throw out wild card, legendary coach for the Minnesota Vikings, Bud Grant, tiny white man, very little muscle on him, but he's the toughest son of a gun you'll ever see. When the Vikings had a playoff game in negative temperatures, he walked out to the coin toss wearing a t-shirt.
If I recall,
that guy's got the sumo mentality.
If I recall, the t-shirt was mandatory. It wasn't just, it was no matter, like, he was just there to be like, if I can take this and I'm like 900 years old in a t-shirt, you know what? So can all my players. Quit bitching about the cold. It's Minnesota. You know what you were getting into.
All right, let's move on. Jake, what do you want to talk about next?
Why don't we take a look at, let's see, we got a handful of questions from one of our regular Twitter followers, and I got to start this one off with a question that was unwritten in this current batch, but was definitely one that I owed an answer to. So Josh, yes, I finally watched Devs, and it was awesome. I think that this is the show Devs on FX. It's a mini series, stars Ron Swanson as Elon Musk, but not
I'm
literally.
in.
But
I'm in.
But it's a TV show that's in my favorite genre of basically everything, which is philosophical sci-fi. Use sci-fi to make a greater point about philosophy or human nature or whatever. That's the shit that I'm all about. And Devs is a show created by one of my favorite current directors, Alex Garland. This guy did Annihilation or Ex Machina.
I do like Ex Machina a lot.
Yeah. So he excellent up and coming director. He's been a writer in Hollywood for a long time. He wrote 28 Days Later and Cillian Murphy, Sunshine, the one where like they need to like restart the sun or something like that. But but he's been around as a writer for a while. In the last like 5-10 years, he's started becoming a director. And Devs was his first television project. And yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it was awesome. And I would highly recommend it to anybody. It's on Hulu. So the questions that Josh asked for this current batch, though, we should, now that I have answered that one that I have long owed an answer to. Josh, Ryan, you mind if I read this one?
Oh, go for it.
Why do you live in Iowa without using the words corn, hog slaughter, or onerology?
I have no idea what that word is, so he's teaching me something there.
Quick, somebody Google it. It's probably some joke about us being rural.
I'm on it.
Rural Hicks here.
I'm already on it. It is the study of dreams.
Definitely don't get the joke on that one.
Maybe Field of Dreams.
Okay.
Yeah. Did he say onerology field? Yeah, yes. Onerology field. Field of Dreams.
Yep, there you go. Okay, got it. He also asks about Iowa. What is the babage situation, and would Hida Naomi like it?
To the babage situation, I would say 2 out of the 4 of us married Iowa girls. So watch your tone, Josh. I don't like where your mind is going with this. But I will also say to that fact, we're doing just fine in that situation.
We're doing just fine.
Hida Naomi would be plenty happy here in Iowa. But to your other point, Josh, why live in Iowa? My wife asked earlier when I was actually listening to her, which is a miracle in and of itself, that
of course
she asked what kind of questions were being asked, and I brought up somebody asked why would you live in Iowa? She said, "Oh, don't." I'm like, no. I'm going to tell them why to live in Des Moines, and she's like, "Okay, yeah, Des Moines awesome. Iowa sucks."
That is honestly, that's almost word for word my answer.
Yeah. So I have a lot more words. So the capital of this so-called flyover state may not top your to-visit list. Let me move that over here so I talk directly into the mic. But Des Moines is a great place to live and raise a family. Elegant colonial and Tudor-style homes built in the early 1900s hide in quiet neighborhoods minutes from buzzy downtown, where lofts and condos draw the younger crowd. Many families with kids flock to the suburbs, where new housing developments continually pop up, and there's plenty to do and see in Des Moines. Cultural events and festivals draw all ages to the downtown area. One-of-a-kind shops, locally owned restaurants, and hip bars and enlivened entertainment districts, and plenty of bike trails and parks, and even a few lakes provide opportunities for outdoor recreation. That is a snippet from an article by Sarah Diekelman from U.S. News, and it was about the best places to live in America ranking from 2020, where Des Moines, Iowa is ranked number 7. That's right. Number 7 out of 19,495 incorporated cities, towns, and villages in the United States.
Yeah, like I'm living here, but I'm pretty sure every city in the United States has like one of those lists of where it's like the best place to live.
I would. Des Moines is number 7.
Therefore, it must be a pretty solid list. Yeah. I guess the one thing that I would dispute there is that old houses blow. You're not
wrong.
Being the podcast host who lives in the oldest house out of our crew, Ryan, how do you like doing house projects on your house?
I don't. I'm going to sell it soon. I hire other people to do it, which costs way more. But yeah, there's been a lot of work done on this house that hopefully will be sold within.
My house is like half as old as yours, and I kind of hate it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's one thing where the wife and I disagree. She loves the old houses because they have character, and I like new houses because I don't have to do stuff to them.
Yeah, I don't necessarily like it to creak every time I like look at the floor or something. You know, I appreciate it when stuff doesn't like roll when I drop it, but you know, to each their own.
Yeah. So that number 7 ranking is ahead of cities like Portland, San Francisco, Boston, and Seattle. If you could think of a city in the U.S., Des Moines is probably better than it, except if you live in Colorado, where they have 4 out of the 5 top cities to live in. Colorado's all right. You should move there and then move to Des Moines.
Or better yet, get a job in San Francisco that lets you work remote and then live in Des Moines. Because goddamn, you will be rolling in it.
Yeah.
Cost of living is rock bottom, and it's the best.
Yeah. So I have a big long list where I was going to talk about, like, we got entertainment, Wells Fargo Arena. Like, you're going to see all the top acts, like Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, Foo Fighters, Garth Brooks, Elton John. I'm not saying they're all good. I'm just saying those are the biggest names in their fields, and they all come to Des Moines. If you're not into concerts and you want Broadway, go to the Civic Center. Book of Mormon, The Lion King, Hamilton have all rolled through Des Moines.
You sound really desperate here. Can we move on?
Yeah.
I have so much more. I love Des Moines. We have so many sports. They're not the top level sports, but they're literally the level below. Like the Iowa Wolves and Iowa Wild. These are guys that are going to be playing for the Minnesota Wild and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Plus, the games only cost $10, and they're just as entertaining.
I got season tickets to the local soccer team that we have here.
The Des Moines Menace.
Des Moines Menace, yes. This was like my first
Such
year.
a cute name for us.
Yeah, I know.
They're like somewhat bothersome.
They've won some championships, I think.
They sent a thing where it's literally was it like a bumper sticker? Just on like a actual cup or something like that. But
like I said, tickets cost $10. They don't have all the merch.
Yeah. So, but the point is, like, I was looking up on the website, like, say, okay, let's figure out what this team is about, and they're like the 4th division on the soccer pyramid, the UCL 2 or something like that in the United States. And I was like, okay, and they were just talking about like, yeah, we have we're a very good and successful team. Where a lot of our players go on to play in higher divisions, but because of that, there's a lot of turnover every year. And then they had some testimonials from players like, yeah. Like most of it was like, I didn't want to come to Des Moines, Iowa. But when I came here, it's like, hey, this is actually kind of okay.
Yes. That's what everybody says. They get to Des Moines. They're like, Des Moines actually pretty cool.
Yeah. But I think it's just funny is like more than half the battle is just convincing them to come here and players.
Oh, yeah.
That just makes me giggle.
Definitely. And then, so I got a lot more, but in the interest of time, one of the last things I'm going to say is the food is amazing in Des Moines. There are so many restaurants. My wife wanted to point out it has like one of the highest restaurants per capita. There's some very top level food people that have like a bunch of different original restaurants. It's not like all Applebee's and Chili's and TGI Fridays. I don't even think we have a TGI Fridays, but the food is so good in Des Moines. Yeah. I highly recommend coming here for that.
If you ever pass through here, go to Nick's and get a pork tenderloin. It's as big as your face, and it's the greatest thing that man has created.
Alton Brown of Food Network fame says that the crab rangoon pizza from Fong's Pizza is like one of his favorite dishes ever. There's just a whole lot of original, amazing food. So if for nothing else, stop by Des Moines and try some of the amazing restaurants. It's going to take you a couple of weeks to get through them. All right. Next question that was Jake's, but it was a lot of me. So technically it's Flarrick's turn to choose a question.
Oh my. Okay.
Whatever you got, buddy.
Okay. When Chushoma hangs up his Mawashi, who will take up the title of the villain or bad boy of sumo? And this is from @ResetShift, I believe on Twitter.
Yes. I mean, I feel like the obvious one is Abi. I mean, he's been suspended for violating the COVID ban. But I think the big one is that he's the guy responsible for getting rid of all the sumo wrestlers' social media.
I cannot think of a bigger crime.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking too. Right now, the easy ones are Abi and Asanoyama, the COVID boys.
And Ryuden. I would put Ryuden above them because of the circumstance.
That's like that's still a legend, right?
I don't know. Think of Mrs. Ryuden. I pity Mrs. Ryuden.
Yeah, but still like
he doesn't deserve
stuff.
that.
I don't know. I rather kind of stick with the things we do know, which those two have definitely kind of fucked up, and so I will probably those two will be the top of my head. But then again, I do like a Teruno Fuji as like a giant heel, kind of saying the fuck you to everyone.
Yeah, honestly, my dream scenario, one of my dream scenarios is he wins this coming Yusho with a Henka. gets promoted to Yokozuna because you can't deny that, but also is completely shameless about it. Oh man, that's the kind of heel shit that I live for.
That's some WWE stuff right there.
Oh, beautiful.
I mean, I think I think when Chushoma hangs up his Mawashi, it's gonna who's taking up like the villain henchman role, because I feel like the big bad is Hakuho.
He's still the boss monster for sure. I think another dark horse here might be Teratsuyoshi, who's just kind of a cocky little shit sometimes. And I think that's one of the primary attributes you look for in somebody to love to hate, Yeah.
Well, I also know in some circles, not this podcast because we love and revere the Henka, but Tochinoshin. There's a lot of people that have soured on Tochinoshin. He's been using the Henka a lot more in his later years, and as we mentioned in our Kakuryu episode, the very high profile and very frowned upon Henka against a Yokozuna.
Very perfect, very sublime, very dreamlike, amazing Henka. Yeah.
Still the funniest thing I've ever seen in all of sumo.
Oh my God.
All right, back to me. All right. I have to answer this one from Beth. She sent us an email just earlier today, but I had to answer it because she called me a Bansuke wizard. And flattery will get you everywhere on this podcast. So Beth, not only are you my favorite podcast listener,
what have you done?
I have a answer for your question. So her question was, how has Shonan Zakura been rising in the ranks since last July? Shonan Zakura, for those who don't know, is formerly Hattori Zakura. He is very famous for not having won a match, I believe, since 2019. He's 300 something in his career.
No, he's 300 something.
Fair.
He's 231 and 1.
Yes. So despite only having 3 wins in his long career, since last July, he has gone up in the Jonokuchi rankings every basho up until May. That will stop for the Nagoya basho. But he started off in July of 2020 at Jonokuchi 35 East, and he is in Natsu of 2021. He was Jonokuchi 9 East. So despite not winning a match for a year, he rose up the Bansuke every single time. So
he's just that talented.
He's just that good. First, we need to understand the hierarchy of rankings in Jonokuchi. And so the bottom ranked guys in Jonokuchi will be the Rickshie that were winless in Maizumo, the previous basho. So when people are joining sumo, the first basho, they're off the Bansuke, they do Maizumo, they do like 3 or 4 matches. If there's somebody who doesn't win a single Maizumo match, they still go up to Jonokuchi, but they're going to be the bottom ranked guys. And then the next tier above them are the guys that participated at least one day in the tournament and were winless. So this is where Shonan Zakura is always slotted. If you didn't show up and you didn't get any wins, then you drop off the Bansuke back down to Maizumo because you're absent. But even if you go 0-7, as long as you show up, you stay on the Bansuke.
Another thing to note here is that despite him going up in ranking, he's still like the bottom guy.
Yeah.
Or like within 1 or 2 of the bottom. So Jonokuchi is not like Makuuchi. In Makuuchi, you have 42 guys, period. In Juryo, you have 28 guys, period. The divisions lower than that aren't necessarily quite as set in stone. So the number of ranks in Jonokuchi can vary quite a bit. So it can vary from like the teens to the 20s to the 30s even, just depending on how many active wrestlers there are, how many people are entering sumo, how many people are retiring from sumo, how many people are in the division above, all sorts of different factors can come in. But it is absolutely hilarious that he has gone up in rank for a year. It is coincidence, but it is amazing and I love it.
Yeah. Why are you talking like I'm even halfway done with my explanation?
I misinterpreted. You continue, please.
You mean this can't be just covered by there has to be a bottom division somewhere and people have to enter in somewhere?
I'm covering exactly how it happens.
Okay.
So Give
So
me 5
buckle
minutes.
Buckle in, Fleric.
How about 2?
I am a Bonds-K wizard. Let me do my
Jesus.
magic.
Could you just do this on the Bonsuke episode?
No, because she asked for this one. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to mute myself so I can eat my sandwich for the next 15 minutes while Ryan goes into this one.
There you go. All right. So after you have the guys that were winless but participated in Jonokuchi, then you have the rest of the Maizumo Rickshie that will be ranked above them. And then above all the other Maizumo Rickshie that accumulated at least one win the previous tournament, then it's just a mix of all the Jonokuchi Rickshie that had a losing record from the previous Basho and the Jonidan Rickshie that were demoted. And a quick note, something I just discovered. All Jonokuchi Rickshie with a winning record are promoted up to Jonidan. So you could be the bottom ranked guy in Jonokuchi, get just a 4 and 3, you're automatically up to Jonidan. So winning record in Jonokuchi, automatic promotion to the next division. And so as Jake explained, the size of Jonokuchi is always shifting based on how many new Rickshie are coming in from Maizumo, based on how many Rickshie had a winning record the previous time and are leaving the division by going up to Jonidan, and also how many Rickshie are coming down from Jonidan. So it's always a shifting amount of Rickshie there. So how exactly has Shonan Zakura risen in rank? I'm just going to look at one Basho and break down exactly what happened and how he rose in rank there. And it's basically going to be the same thing for 4 straight Basho. So in July 2020, he was ranked Jonokuchi 35 East. There were 31 Rickshie that had a winning record, and there were 4 retirees in Jonokuchi, which means that between those 35 Rickshie, we were losing 17 and a half ranks from Jonokuchi if nobody else was joining it. But luckily, we had 13 Rickshie in Maizumo and 18 Rickshie that were demoted from Jonidan, meaning Jonokuchi gained 15 and a half ranks. So that netted out to a total loss of 2 ranks from July to Aki. So Jonokuchi in July went down to Jonokuchi 37 East, and in Aki, it went down to Jonokuchi 35 East. So in the Maizumo for the July 2020 Basho, there were 5 Rickshie that did not record a win, so they were all ranked below Shonan Zakura. Shonan Zakura was the lowest ranked Rickshie in Jonokuchi that was winless, so he was the next guy after them. So he ended up ranked at Jonokuchi 32 West in Aki, which was 2 ranks or 3 ranks above his Jonokuchi 35 East rank in July. So that's how it happens every Basho. So similar stuff happened from Aki to Haru, where there were just more and more Rickshie winning and leaving Jonokuchi, but there were not enough Rickshie in Maizumo to refill the ranks or dropping down from Jonidan. So it just kept getting smaller and smaller, which just pushed Shonan Zakura up and up. But then the big jump happened from Haru of 2021, where he was like Jonokuchi 24. He jumped all the way up to Jonokuchi 9. And what happened in Haru, there were 33 Rickshie in Maizumo, but there were no Maizumo matches because of COVID. So none of them had any wins, and all of them would need to be ranked below Shonan Zakura. So we're adding in 16 and a half ranks of people that need to be below Shonan Zakura, which vaulted him up the rankings.
Yeah. The one point I wanted to make, first of all, you're a Bonsuke wizard, Ryan.
Thank you.
You do that quite well.
Jake, I will only be referred to as Bonsuke Wizard on the Bonsuke episodes from now on.
I will allow it.
Thank you, Fleric.
Anyways, I just want to say, like, Haru's typically the Basho we get the most recruits from, usually. I think a lot of it has to do with like the academic school year and just kind of the good weather in Osaka. Everyone loves Osaka. So like usually like the next one, Natsu, is when like a lot of people join Jonokuchi. That's probably when you kind of see some of the bigger like jumps is around that time. Or if like we said like no one has like a match at all, then even bigger jump.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, since Jake is still working on chewing his sandwich, Fleric, why don't you choose the next question?
Oh, I was not expecting this. Let's go with the good old.
I've completed my bite.
Go for it. Thanks for bailing me out.
Okay. We have one of the final 2 questions. I'd like to pick either of those for potentially closing us out here.
Sure.
Do you guys have a vote?
I already know where you're going with this, I think.
Okie dokie. So, Which Rickshie would be the best in pro wrestling? Thank you, Tim Sumo, for this question. Well, also, along with that, what would their finishing move be? And I think this is another one like Jan Gooning's, however you say that. This is a question that our podcast is uniquely suited to answer because we are very well versed in pro wrestling and somewhat versed in sumo wrestling. So a couple, I think, let me start off with an easy answer. I think Kaisei would make an excellent pro wrestler. I think he would be a good, whenever Big Show is a heel, whenever Big Show is a face, that's who Kaisei could be. I know Big Show changes like every week, or he did like throughout most of his career. He would change heel to face so fast. But when he was a face, he was like the big lovable guy. He was bigger than everybody. But he was a guy that was just simple and fun to love. And I think that's exactly who Kaisei could be. He could be just that lovable dude who just bear hugs the absolute shit out of people. Bear hug would totally be his like submission finisher. And I think that he would be a lot of fun because Kaisei is one of the guys that is clearly like one of the nicest people out of the wrestlers. You always see him do his best to avoid hurting somebody or helping people up on the dohyo. All these little things that make it clear that Kaisei's probably a good dude. And I think that persona could carry him well in pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. Ryan, you got any ideas?
I'm just going to steal the ones that you have already listed because I did not put a whole lot of thought into this myself. But I absolutely love the Teretsuyoshi chicken shit heel kind of comparison. He's definitely that kind of guy just looking for any angle to win a match, especially just spamming the Ashitori leg pick recently. And yeah, like I said, he'd just be doing Ric Flair things to win matches. He's going to poke you in the eyes. He's going to hit you in the nuts. He's going to fall down like he was hit with a chair, then throw the chair so that you catch it and hold it. And then the ref thinks that you hit him with the chair. So you get disqualified.
He's going to be trying
things.
He's going to be like sneakily like pulling hair and like trying to grab people by like the vertical thing, the Mawashi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think he throws the salt in the ring? It's to give his opponents worse legging so that they fall down easier in the match. It's a complete heel move for Teretsuyoshi.
Oh, and as soon as the Gyoji looks away, he's picking up that salt off the floor and throwing it in his opponent's eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
Guarantee it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say with like when I think of like obviously pro wrestling is not my wheelhouse, but when I think of pro wrestlers, I think of expressive faces, like where they're just kind of really selling stuff. And so I'm going to throw out Chiyomaru. Like he has like some of the happiest jolly facial expressions I've ever seen. And I think he can really kind of pull off a likable character.
When you said likable faces, first thing that came to my mind was Tobizaru. I think that would be like a young up and coming face that all the fans would get behind. And he's gonna be the guy that you throw at the champions and he never quite gets over. And then 10 years down the line at Sumo Mania, he finally gets his time to shine. And he finally wins the main event of Sumo Mania, and it's just the most amazing thing because you've had those 10 years of building him up to be this face. He's always falling just short, and he's always just doing it with a smile on his face, and then he finally gets there and does it, and then everybody cries and everybody's happy.
Yeah, and he has like a brother too that can create some interesting storylines.
Hide Naomi,
yeah.
Hide Naomi would be like he'd be a good guy, but he'd be the sleazy good guy. He'd be more like the comedy relief character. Yeah. He's never going to amount to anything in his career, but he's there for the comic relief for Tobizaru to play off of.
He's the ladies' man that's constantly striking out in promo segments.
Absolutely.
I also wrote down Enho and Ishiro would be a high flying tag team. And it's hard to describe how this would actually look, but I believe the move that they would use for their finisher would be the triple double Hurricane Rana Bomb. Which
is it sad that I know exactly what you're talking about?
It's sad and also make believe that you pretend to know that that's a thing.
Well, I know what a Hurricane Rana Bomb is. Don't know what a triple double.
Oh, come on! Don't insult me. Of course, we all know what a Hurricane Rana Bomb is. But no, I think it's kind of a gimme answer that those two guys would be the high flyers jumping off the top straw bale to pull off high flying moves.
Oh,
and
definitely.
Of course, because what does it say on that wall? I got to talk about my boy Takayasu. I think my boy Takayasu would be kind of like a Batista character. He'd be like a
Batista won championships though.
Well, one,
Oh,
what the hell, man? And two, that's a solid point. But I think
But
he
this
would
is
be like
make believe.
But this is make believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And everybody and their mother has a title in pro wrestling. So Takayasu would be that Batista role where he's like the big bruiser. He's not like in the absolute top like Kaisei weight class, but he's up there and he uses like the big power moves. So something like just a simple power bomb would totally be very Takayasu. Just I'm bigger and angrier and tougher than you, but I'm not but bigness isn't my only trait.
Yeah, I totally see Takayasu as like the long reigning United States champion, not like the world heavyweight champion, but like the United States champion,
the Jun-Yu show title holder.
Yeah. All right, Flair, do you got one more?
Yeah. Let's go with the at Loka Ska 20, Low Ska 20, I believe, at Twitter, since it has the at symbol. And in a sumo video game where you can have Rickshie fight normal or weaponized mode, what weapon would you give your favorite Rickshie? I'm assuming that this is kind of like Tekken versus Soul Calibur. That's the one of where it's what like martial striking, and then you have like all the weapons and stuff. Like, so what kind of weapons would you give your Rickshie? Is the idea I'm taking behind this.
Well, being
I'm
the only one
who
wrote something down ahead of time, I think you just put a helmet on Takayasu. or maybe shoulder pads. Just emphasize his ability to Tachi the crap out of somebody and then just like be bigger and tougher than them. So same answer as my pro wrestling thing, but
I was gonna go with gun. And I don't know exactly who, but I guess I'd like Tobizaru. Give that guy a gun.
Give
but they would do well.
Tobizaru wouldn't be the face if he's running around shooting everybody.
Well, it depends how you set it up. You can like make this a good thing. Like he's a hero, and like all these other Rickshie that are just kind of beating him down, like doing dastardly stuff, like pulling hair. And so he had no choice but to. And his like parents were killed like in dark alley. He had no choice but to have a gun.
You son of a bitch! You pulled my hair. Bang.
My initial thought was fairly similar to Flarex. It's just like, I think every sport needs more baseball bats wherever you can put it. So baseball bat is always a good one. But I was also thinking Ishiura could do some damage with some brass knuckles. We saw the haymakers he was throwing at Akisayama. So I think Ishiura could make some use out of brass knuckles.
That'd be good. Tops can be weapon, like yo-yo tops, or I guess yo-yo, not a top. That could be kind of fun. A little ranged.
Yeah. Similar to that, I saw a video on Reddit recently about a guy who was extremely proficient with a knife on the end of a rope, and he had to do a lot of fancy like leg movements for that. So I think Hoshoryu would be perfect if you just like put a knife on the end of a rope and just see what he can do.
I too have watched ninja anime.
All right. We have 1 minute left, and I think I can get one more in because I do want to answer one of Anna's questions. Anna was the one who emailed us like, hey, you guys should do a question answering thing. She proceeded to send us 11 questions, and we haven't answered one yet. So I do want to answer.
We're out of time. Well, out of time. It's been a pleasure.
Anna. So one of the ones she asked was, do the gold stripes on the inside of the mawashi have any symbolism? And so I did a little bit of research and I found a Tachi article titled Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Mawashi, which was written by Haruth, aka Sumo Follower on Twitter.
And it still isn't nearly comprehensive enough for my desire about mawashi knowledge.
Yeah. So first, we need a quick distinction. The mawashi is the cotton belt worn for training or competition when you're ranked below Juryo. And then it is the shime koni, which is the silk belt worn for competition by Sekitori. So it is the shime koni that you sometimes see that gold striping on. I think Takayasu is always the first guy that I think of that I can remember seeing those gold stripes on his mawashi. And so those gold stripes come from the artisan that makes those shimekomi. Most shimekomi are made by the same artisan, Mr. Nakagawa from Nagahama City in Shiga Prefecture, and the gold stripes are his artisan mark. So if you see those gold stripes, you know that they were made by Mr. Nakagawa.
Oh, wow. I've heard they're really expensive too, like the mawashis that you do.
I saw it was like 1 million yen for a silk mawashi.
Yeah, so like 10,000.
So like 10 grand. Holy
Yeah.
cow!
It takes 10 days to make one. It was a really good article, and despite what Jake said, it is very in depth. And so if you have any interest
Yeah.
in mawashi or shimekoni,
That wasn't me tearing down the article.
You just underestimate how much Jake wants to know about mawashis.
100%. I was not trying to tear down the article. I was trying to build up my desire for mawashi knowledge.
Fair enough. All right, I think that hits our about an hour mark. We're probably going to go a little over with our saying goodbye, but we barely scratched the surface with our questions. We have so many more. This is probably gonna be at least 2 more, if not 3 more segments. Keep sending us questions. We'll just keep doing it. We'll just keep answering them. So send us the questions on Twitter at GSumo Breakdown, on email, grandsumobreakdown@gmail.com. You can send us a voicemail, 805-613-7866. That's 805-613-SUMO. You can hit us up on Facebook. We've got a blog. You can also leave us a question and a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast listening services.
In particular, on Patreon, if you paid us $3, you are entitled to ask us like an in-depth thing. Like, by all means, jump on that. We appreciate the in-depth ideas to research.
Yeah. So I think that's all we have for this episode. Coming up, the Bansuke is going to be released on Sunday. So your Bansuke wizard will go over the results of the Bansuke and break all of that down for you. And then the week after that, we're going to have our typical preview episode for the Nagoya Basho. And then on July 4th, God bless America, we're going to have 2 weeks of sumo.
Yeah,
Beth, I will never forgive you for this Bansuke wizard title.
Please, Bansuke Wizard Senpai, teach me the ways of the Bansuke.
Well, all you have to do is listen to literally any of the Bansuke episodes, Fleric.
Which is not going to happen.
Ugh, I got like a food in the oven. I gotta get going.
I'm actually busy that night.
Yep.
We'll just have Beth keep asking me questions about the Bansuke, and then I can just go in depth and break down how it all works on these episodes.
We're gonna have 10 more GSB asks you.
All right,
help us all, Beth.
We won't see you later. You'll see us later because we're on YouTube, but we'll talk at you later. Bye.
Bye.
You're so good at this.
You'd think after like 4 years.
Thank you for listening to Grand Sumo Breakdown. Until next time,
Throw your salt high.
And keep moving forward.